I'm going to expose the truth about business funding companies, and I'm going to tell you why you should work with the funding company and why you should not work with the funding company. Watch the entire video. This is not biased because I just got to be transparent. I do have a funding company, so what I'm telling you is going to be factual information. I understand that it's certain situations where people should work with them, it's certain situations where people should not work with them. So let's just get straight to it. Let's talk about the truth. So, when it comes to business funding, y'all got to understand that business funding companies, loan broker companies, whatever they want to call it, they're basically brokers that have relationships that you may not have or you may not know about. And they know what you don't know as far as sequences, what to fill out on an application, how to actually structure the personal credit report and the business so that you can maximize the funding. If you're working with a good business funding company, that's what it'll be, right? I'm not saying all funding companies are structured that way and have all that knowledge, but that's what it should be. The truth too. This is something that funding companies do not want you to know, right? But I gotta tell y'all the truth. You can literally do your funding yourself if you understand the game and you take the time to build the relationships with the bank relationship managers, which are typically what funding companies that are excelling are gonna have, right? They have relationships. They are able to contact certain bank reps that'll make it easier, right? So keep that in mind. But at the same time, you got to think about it. It's the same concept. You can literally cut your hair, but people go to a barber, right? So I invest in a barber, right? Some people go to the extent of investing a high ticket amount as far as, house calls and stuff like that. Me personally, I'm a business owner. I understand the value of my time. I know I can learn how to cut my own hair, but I choose to consistently pay a barber for that service. I'm leaving it up to the expert. So it's the same exact concept. And then just like you can change your own oil, right? So it's pretty much the same concept. My whole point in telling you this is you can literally do it yourself. You can do your funding yourself, but are you an expert in what you're doing? Do you know the sequences, right? Do you know certain stipulations? Do you have the relationships, things like that. So just keep that in mind as you figure out if you want to work with a funding company or if you want to do it yourself. So the truth as well, industry standard is typically charging a success fee of about 10%. So whatever the funding company gets you, they'll get a 10% kickback. So like let's say they get you $50,000 in 0% interest credit cards. They'll send you an invoice for $5,000. And the good thing about that in a sense is if they get you one of those cards, they're like, oh, spend X amount of money and you get your sign-up bonus, that's cool in that aspect. But the bad thing about it in a sense too, if you're thinking like, okay, I want to just get my funding myself, I don't want to have to, spend money with somebody to help me get the funding. And it's pros and cons, right? I just want to come on here and just educate y'all, but I also want y'all to know, right? Like I said, fully transparent. If you're new to my channel or you're just seeing me randomly, I do have a funding company. We are changing, people's lives with the funding, but at the same time, I know that not everybody, it's not going to be for everybody, right? So let me tell you when you should not work with the funding company. This is a profile for someone that shouldn't work with the funding company. If you value your money more than time, I wouldn't necessarily recommend that you work with the funding company. If you're willing to take the time to learn the game, right? Because you got to look at it as money versus time, time versus money. As business owners, right? The reason why people come to me and my funding company is because they know their lane. They might be in trucking, they might be in real estate, they might be, something high risk, maybe low risk, but they understand that I understand the credit game. I understand how to properly structure the credit. I understand how to, remove these negative items so that I can be able to help them leverage so that they can go and get the funding, right? So it's just one of those things that, if you know, you know. If you don't know, you don't know. So keep that in mind. And there's nothing wrong with it if you want to do it yourself. So yeah, keep that in mind. When you should not work with the funding company as well. If you don't necessarily care about maximizing your chances for funding, right? If you just literally want approvals, even if they're minimum, you can in fact take your credit, assuming it's good score, good built out profile. You can go online and get your approvals. But the thing is, are you going to maximize getting those approvals if you don't have those relationships that that funding company has? If you don't know how to actually structure the application, stated income, things like that. So the NACES code, things like that. So just understand that. So those are the situations where I would say you should not work with the funding company. So just keep that in mind as you go on about your business. So when you should work with the funding company, this is what I recommend. If you value your time more than money, right? So when I think about like my perfect avatar that we've gotten a lot of funding, it's these high level, seven figure, eight figure business owners that understand that they know their business. So they're going to focus their time and energy on their business. They value their time more than money because they know that money is an infinite resource, but you can't buy back your time. So they don't have the time to be like, okay, let me go learn a funding sequence. Let me learn the laws like Michael. Let me do this. Let me do that. Let me learn the sequence. They don't got time for that, right? So I understand that, and that's the market that I serve, right? So keep that in mind. So if you're one of those people, right, you don't have to be a seven or eight figure business owner already. It could just be simply the mindset. Maybe you're working at 9 to 5, you're looking to transition, but you understand and value experts, right? So keep that in mind if you don't want to waste your time trying to learn the sequences and how to fill out the apps, building relationships, etc. I would recommend you probably consider working with a funding company that you would trust. If you want to maximize your funding, I think it's the best way to do it, assuming you're working with a reputable business funding company, right? I understand that the industry, as far as business funding, as far as credit repair, et cetera, it's very predatory, right? People are very predatory. So you gotta use your intuition and use your logic, right? When you look at it like, okay, who do I want to work with, right? I can only speak on myself, right? Because I know the type of business that we do. If you look at my channel, you see the posts that we're doing. You see me teaching other people how to do it. If you've seen the video I did with my client Don, we got her, the 50K. You see how she's speaking about the situation. So just like use common sense when you're doing it. If you go to somebody's YouTube channel, they don't have like they're not showing their face. I got so many videos showing my face and everything. Like it's just logic. Like, why would I choose out of you of all people, why would I just start choosing to scam you, right? When I'm working with these seven, eight figure business owners, I'm getting funding. You might be someone that's just starting. Like, let's use common sense. Why would I scam you? Like, what do you bring to the table that I'm gonna scam you? You know what I'm saying? So just keep that in mind as you're looking for who you're gonna work with. Just use common sense as well. So if you value the knowledge and expertise someone else has that you might not have, then I would say, you might want to consider working with a funding company. If you want to make money doing the same exact thing, right? I'm going to get more into that. So let's say you work with us or you work with a different reputable funding company. You might go through it, maybe you get 100K and then you pay your $10,000 invoice and then you're just like, dang, this is something that I could do to make some extra money, right? You can even do it just to pay back what you invested with the funding company, so that's the reason why I would say that you should start a funding company as well. But if you're a small business owner, you're just focused on your own lane, you wouldn't want to start a funding company, then maybe you shouldn't. Maybe you shouldn't do it. Maybe you should work with the funding company if you don't want to learn the funding aspect. So, you know, there's obviously, as you look at when I said reasons why you should work with the funding company and why you should not work with the funding company, I obviously gave you more reasons of why you should work with the funding company. Fully transparent, that's not me trying to be biased. I just see more reasons to work with the funding company versus not work with the funding company. But I understand that there's certain factors when you should not work with the funding company. So this is why I want y'all to just be aware of just me trying to just do my best to make it non-biased of in terms of working with the funding company. Y'all should do a count on how many times I say funding company. I probably said like 100, 200 times in this video, you know what I'm saying? But it is what it is. All right, so the reality, let's talk about it. So the reality, it's a higher likelihood that business funding companies know the game more than you, right? So a lot of y'all that are longtime subscribers of my channel, you see me talking about credit, you see me talking about funding. I'm presenting all these different banks and stuff like that. I know these sequences, I know the laws, I know all this stuff. It's a higher likelihood that I know this stuff more than you. And that's why you would want to work with a funding company, essentially, right? So just like keep it in mind. It's like somebody in the NBA versus like a casual or somebody that, could play at a collegiate level. Is probably a reason why those people are in the NBA, you know what I'm saying? So keep that in mind. And then one thing you got to realize too is that business funding companies typically, I'm not saying everyone does, right? Typically, they do have relationships they could work with to get through manual underwriting versus the average person that's just going to apply online by themselves, right? So keep that in mind. And one thing you could do too, if you are looking to do it yourself, you could go and branch and then try to work with the bank relationship manager. But the thing is, this goes back to what I said about the business funding companies. So somebody like myself that's been doing this for a while, I have relationships that I've established for such a long time. I'm gonna have more leeway as far as what I'm able to do versus you going into a branch and you just met this bank relationship manager. You know what I'm saying? So just keep that in mind as well. But it is possible, like I said, if you don't care about maximizing your funding, if you literally just want approvals, structure your credit the correct way, and then you'll be able to, get some funding. So I'm not saying that it's impossible for you to do it by yourself. It just might not be, you just might not maximize what you can get. So one thing I'll say too, the reality. So people on social media, they have oversimplified the process, in my opinion. And I don't know if it's them not knowing what it is or if they're just doing marketing, I don't know. But there's additional factors that you got to consider. You got to obviously consider the risk of the industry you're in, the name, knowing what to put on applications, knowing how to structure it. You got to understand, is the business that you're trying to get funded in good standing? Some people don't even think about that. Checking the Secretary of State, just making sure that it's an active business, if it's even in good standing, if it does have negative business credit information. We do focus on the PG and going that way, but if you do have negative information on your business or if you're not in good standing, that can negatively affect you, right? Knowing the sequences, how to apply, etc. So many different factors that sometimes people don't tend to consider. So when I'm looking on social media and I'm seeing some stuff like that, like, oh, 50 to 250K, all that. Yeah, the reality is it's possible to get all that, but the reality too, it's not as just straightforward as people say it is. So you gotta understand that as well, getting your business email, the phone numbers, etc. Just focusing on the structure, making sure that not only that you do have those personal credit cards, but are they new personal credit cards? Have they been open for a certain amount of time? So keep that in mind. You're going to see a lot of stuff on social media. People are going to be oversimplifying it, and it could just be people getting into the space, seeing like how like, oh shoot, business funding, it's a dope thing I can do. People getting into space are getting excited. It's a very lucrative skill. I understand that. It's a very lucrative high income skill. So I understand people getting into space, but we also got to have integrity with it as well. You got to understand like it's risky to be putting it out here and oversimplifying it and then people, do the wrong thing, right? So just keep that in mind as you're looking on social media. And as I transition, I'm gonna just let y'all know that I'm gonna be having a business funding webinar. Let me just emphasize, right? So I know some people are gonna be running away when we say webinar. I'm gonna have a free, right? So it's gonna be free. But I know you just watching this, you someone that you would invest in yourself anyways. But it's gonna be a free business funding webinar. I'm gonna teach y'all how to start your own funding company and how to fund yourself. If you didn't know, we're basically on a mission. Hold on, let me type the mission. So our mission is to fund $1 billion to small business owners. The reality is I can't do it myself, right? So obviously, the more that I teach y'all to do it, the more that, I get more people that's getting these approvals, we get closer to our mission of funding $1 billion to small business owners. So if you want more information on that, click the link in the description and you'll be able to tap into that free business funding webinar. And, maybe you'll be able to start your own funding company. You never know. Start making your thousands of dollars per transaction. Or even at the worst case, use the information to help fund yourself. With that being said, hopefully this was helpful. Keep watching my videos if it's helpful. Y'all have a blessed one.